I haven't been posting videos as much lately. I've been pretty busy. Um, but I decided to post a video on some of my thoughts on the format so far and on how windups fit in the format. So my initial impression was the format would be similar enough to the previous format where I could just run the same deck. Um, and it's a little bit different. It's a different enough that changes are going to be necessary to the main deck that I was running. So I am going to make a few changes and I'll test that out. And I might be posting another deck profile sometime in the future. But like I said earlier, I've been pretty busy, so I might not have time to do that. But here's some of my thoughts on the format. Um, I find every deck to be pretty easy to beat except for Bujin's, Geargia, Prophecy, and Harpies. And the last two, Harpies and Prophecy, are only difficult if you can't get rid of their field spell. If you can get rid of their field spell, then they're pretty easy to beat. But their field spells just generate too much advantage for them, which is a problem. Um, to counter that, I'm thinking I'm going to start maining one or two Dust Tornadoes. Um, Also, I think that Dust Tornado is better than Trap Stun this format. That's my impression so far. Particularly because I've seen a lot of people main decking Black Horn of Heaven, and Trap Stun is not very good against Black Horn of Heaven. And Black Horn of Heaven is obviously a good card against windups for when you make your Exceed plays. So, and Dust Tornado is better in that situation too. And Dust Tornado is also pretty good against Bujins. If they're playing Kaiser Coliseum, you want to have MSTs or Dust Tornadoes. And against Geargia, they play a lot of trap cards. So even though they don't have continuous cards or field cards to hit, like the other problem decks, it's still a good card to play against them. So I'm liking Dust Tornado this format. And then on Messenger of Peace, I find Messenger of Peace to be good almost across the board against rogue decks, not the top tier decks. Um, it's been very, very good against those, just stalling out until I get my parts that I need. The problem is against the most popular decks, Geargia and Bujin. It's not that great in my opinion. Geargia can attack under it with Geargia Accelerator, and Geargia Accelerator beats Wind Up Rabbit. If they crash into each other, Geargia Accelerator will get its effect in the graveyard and your rabbit dies. So you have to dodge the attack, and then you have to take the 1400. And Geargia can also just sit behind an armor and gather resources while you have your Messenger of Peace up. And Bujin, similarly, they can't attack, unlike Geargia, unless they make an Omega. They can attack that way. But they can sit on their Yamatos and just add resources. Um, so if you don't have an out to their Yamato, then Messenger of Peace doesn't help you much. Because they just wait until they have an out, and by that point they have too many cards. So I'm thinking that siding Messenger of Peace might be the way to go for this format. Um, that I that's before Mermail's resurgence, though. It's worth noting that Geargia and Mermail were the top two decks by far at the most recent YCS. So I think Mermails are going to become a lot more popular. It's probably going to be Geargia, Bujin, and Mermail are the three most popular decks, all seeing a lot of play. I think Bujins will still see a lot of play, even though they didn't perform as well at the tournament, just because they're a pretty popular deck. I've been seeing a lot of them. Um, and Mermails it's good to have Messenger Piece against Mermails, to be honest. But and Mermails is a pretty easy matchup compared to those other matchups. So that's actually a good thing for windups. More Mermails will make an easier time for us in this meta. And I mentioned earlier that a lot of decks were maining Black Horn of Heaven, and I am leaning that way as well. I think I'm going to start main decking one. I don't really want to main deck two because there are decks like Prophecy that it's just dead against. So I don't want to have to draw two against decks like that. but against most decks, Black Horn of Heaven is costless Solemn Warning against whatever Xe monster they make. It's very good against Geargia, which is probably the toughest deck at the moment. Um, yeah, I would say Geargia is the toughest deck at the moment, and it's useful to have your Black Horns of Heaven against that. And also, previously I was of the opinion that it wasn't that great against Bujins because it doesn't hit Yamato, but I found that it's actually fairly easy to stop all of their Yamatos, and then the Bujin players react by exceeding for a Susanoo, and then searching with that. And since I stopped the Yamato, I no longer have a response to the Susanoo. So I think having Blackhorn of Heaven there would be handy as well. I don't think it would be quite as good, but I think it'll still be good in that matchup. And it's not as good against Mermails. Also, it's just all right, but you can hit their what's that card called? Their Bahamut Shark, which they summon a lot, and you can also hit their rank 7s if they go for a rank 7 play. That's okay. It's good. Hitting the rank 7 is good if they summon it with 2 of their Mermails, but if they summon it with a title, it's not as good. It's just a 1-for-1 then, but it's still a solid play. So it's not a bad card in that matchup, I would say. Another thing that I wanted to point out was there's a new card coming out in a couple weeks, Kuribandit. I really like this card in the deck. I feel like Tour Guide is really strong right now, mostly because Tour Guide summons Alucard, and Alucard is good against almost every deck, and it's especially good against Geargia. You can just use Alucard to hit their armor. And so more tour guides is more Alucards is how I think of it. The problem with that is there is not a good target to run with tour guide. The best ones are Night Assailant and Tour Bus, and both of those are pretty bad to draw. So I was just running 2 tour guides because I didn't want to draw either of them. But Kuribandit is actually a card that can be useful when you draw it. You can use it to speed through your deck to try to get to your factories quicker. If your factory is not one of the top 5 cards in the deck, then you just skipped ahead 5 turns where you wouldn't have been drawing factory, so you'll just draw factory quicker. So I really like Kuribandit in the deck as a tour guide target, so you can run 3 tour guides. So I'm going to be trying that out to see if that's as good in practice as it seems to be in theory. So that's some of my thoughts on the format so far. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to check out some of my other stuff. I'll have links after this.